It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. I am going to see if it works today with today's planned guest. Her name is, oh, you're there. Okay, Elizabeth, I see you. I'm going to invite you. Let's see if we can get you on. Elizabeth and I were just trying to have a conversation. I really want to get her on here because we want to talk about how to learn to trust again after getting out of a toxic relationship. But we don't know if her camera is working. So let's see. I'm pressing go live. It's not working. Maybe. You know what? I'm gonna try canceling it. All right, Elizabeth, I'm gonna do it again. All right. Hopefully we can get her on here. All right, it says requested. Let's try it again. So all right, Elizabeth, I'm trying to, it's inviting you and requesting, and it's not starting for some reason, but I really want to see your face and I really want to have this conversation. Oh.
I think it's working. Oh my gosh, that was so challenging. This is
I
just
know.
where I don't have social media skills.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Well, it's so good to see you. I can't believe that we're actually looking at each other's faces finally. I was like, this
Yeah.
isn't going to happen, but good. Well, good to see you. And
Yes, you
we'll,
too.
yeah, before we start, before you formally introduce yourself, I had said we're going to talk about how to learn to trust again, especially getting out of a toxic relationship. But before you even introduce yourself formally, can you just comment on how common is it to have betrayal in a relationship in
Oh
general? Is it something
gosh.
that happens all the time or only in really bad relationships?
No, it's very common, unfortunately. And I think it probably depends on which sorts of betrayals. There are all sorts of betrayals that couples can experience, from intimate partner violence to affairs and cheating, and even to like financial betrayals that happen. There's a very large range. Um, and you also have differences in the level of injury that can
Mm.
happen to an individual and to the relationship based on a betrayal. So some betrayals are, small, like my sister forgot my birthday. That would be a pretty small betrayal, you know.
Hmm.
But the big betrayals, also there can be quite a bit of variety in how much a person or a relationship is injured by that. But of course, the most common ones are infidelity,
Hmm.
in some way, a breach of the contract for. It can happen both in monogamous and consensually non-monogamous relationships, a breach of whatever the agreement was around that. And then with violence, if we also include um, emotional abuse in that, it's like 80% of couples will at some point have some form of violence in their relationship. So it's very
Really?
common.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we even get into this, how about, Elizabeth, you formally introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do, and then I want to keep talking about this.
Yes, yeah, happy to. So I'm Dr. Elizabeth Polinsky. I am the owner and founder of Communicate and Connect Counseling in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We also have an office in Fairfax, Virginia. We really specialize in working with military and veteran couples to help them improve their relationships. And we focus a lot on a type of therapy called emotionally focused couple therapy, which is the gold standard couple therapy currently in terms of research to support it. And so I'll probably be talking a little bit about that and how that approaches healing from betrayals, as we chat about this.
Wow. Okay. So that statistic was staggering that you just said about 80% of couples experience some kind of violence. Can you talk about that a
Intimate
little bit
partner
more?
violence. Yeah. And so
Wow.
yeah, there. that's lifetime, lifetime of the relationship prevalence. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they are experiencing violence, every day.
Hmm.
But yeah, when we include emotional abuse into the picture, it's very, very high. And one of the things that is also worthwhile to distinguish as we're talking about this is something called situational couple violence, which is basically a conflict. It's a fight that got really out of hand. Nobody is wanting there to be violence. Nobody is like going into the conflict intending for there to be violence. It just really escalates between them. And then you have something called intimate terrorism, which is what most people think of when they think of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, where there is somebody who is very controlling, who like wants to hurt somebody. They might feel like they have the right to punish you if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, and that sort of thing is very different than situational couple violence, where the conflict just gets incredibly heated between two people, but they really love each other and they want safety between them.
Can you give an example of situational couple violence
Hmm.
versus the domestic violence that we see all the time? Is that intimate? Did you call that terrorism?
Intimate terrorism. Yeah. So, yeah, so I'm going to start with just maybe a baseline understanding of couple conflict, and then
Okay.
I'll talk about how it escalates.
All right.
So in couples, we view couple relationships as a system dynamic that um, the more that we're kind of feeding off of each other because we're so in tune. And there are some different common patterns that can happen or systems of interaction that happen between couples. But the most common one is something called um, a pursue withdraw dynamic. So you have one partner who is really wanting to be close, have connection. They might want to talk through things if they're feeling uncomfortable, but the more they want to talk about it, the other person is like, yeah, this is stressful. I don't like conflict. Let's just cool it all down and we'll just not talk about it. We'll just wait till it passes us by. So they might go quiet, shut down. They're considered the withdrawer. And so the more the person, it can start with either one. So, but let's say the more one person withdraws, the more the person who wants to talk is trying harder to get that person's attention.
Hmm.
The more that person tries harder to get their attention, the other one is like, this is starting to escalate. I don't want to have conflict, and they shut down more, and it goes around in a loop.
As you're saying
So
this, is this like do you see more uh, in terms of like gender with the one that's pursuing, trying to talk about it, or is it totally mixed?
it can be mixed. You can have male pursuers and female withdrawers.
Hmm.
I've had tons of those in my counseling office. I think stereotypically and like in movies and stuff, they typically portray women as the pursuer with a male withdrawer, but that's not always the case.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, but there is like a stereotype of that for sure. So,
Yeah.
um, so another thing that we know from the research is that actually most violence is bidirectional. So this is another when we're talking about situational couple violence, most violence is bidirectional in that both partners are being violent towards each other, not just one person being the perpetrator.
Really?
Mhm.
That's so interesting because in the domestic violence realm, it's one person, 100% who's the abuser. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, they get labeled that way, which is really unfortunate for helping couples heal from intimate partner violence. Because, like in this scenario, I want to talk and you're not talking to me. So now I'm starting to scream in your face and I'm like pushing you in hitting you,
Mhm.
trying really hard to get your attention for you to um, interact with me, and then the other person is starting to defend themselves and they push back and they're like, no, I don't want to talk, this is over, and now we're both pushing each other, and this
Mhm.
is what is the most common, and it can um, feel where we know that the danger is. The How do I say this? Let me back up. The most harm does tend to happen when the withdrawer in this scenario is trying to push to protect themselves from the onslaught
Mhm.
coming on. And so when they're defending themselves, if they push you away and someone trips and they fall down the stairs, they break their nose or something like that, the withdrawer is the one who gets labeled as the abuser. But
Mhm.
oftentimes they were defending themselves from being attacked also.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'm
it's,
seeing comments, and I was thinking something similar, like that term reactive abuse, where someone's just like, leave me alone," and then or they snap and react, and then
yes,
it's like, "Oh, look at you! You're the one who's the abusive person."
yes, versus, and granted, there are different situations for couples where the intimate terrorism piece, where there's one abuser who's very controlling and it's kind of cold and calculated, and
Mhm.
but that's a different thing than what most couples experience. Most
Mhm.
couples are experiencing um, these fights around connection that just escalate
Mhm.
into bidirectional violence. Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. I was going to get back to that whole betrayal thing. Like, how do you know when the betrayal is unhealable? It's like for example, we were talking to somebody very recently who has been married for 21 years, uh, on the verge of divorce, maybe. It's been an unhealthy relationship the whole time. And we were asking her about things she enjoyed about spending time with her partner, because it didn't sound like anything had been good for quite a while. And then over the course, she started blaming herself as being someone who's just not fun. She said, "I don't think I'm fun. I'm very serious." And I thought, this, something is off here. And in the
Yeah.
conversation, it came out that when their children were really little, so let's say 15 years beforehand, her husband had an affair and was continuing on and off throughout the years to have this affair, and that she had never gotten over it, but that she tried, like you said in the beginning,
Yeah.
to not have conflict and just be like, I should be the one forgiving. Maybe it was something that I did wrong. And in my mind, I thought, you've been betrayed, and
Yeah.
it's not like you can just forgive someone who's continuing to betray you. How common are things like that, where someone blames themselves or is made to feel? We've actually unfortunately seen people in therapy where the therapist, I know my own experience, was like, well, maybe there's something that you did that made them unhappy in the relationship to want to cheat on you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm just feeling the pain of that when you
Yeah.
say that. Um, and this is very tricky and it's very hard because no matter the scenario, no matter what anyone does, you do not make someone else cheat, right? Like you cannot, like, you don't put a gun to their head and say cheat on me. Like, you do
Mhm.
not force somebody to cheat on you. So now we can add to a context that might make someone want to do that there, and that is part of what couples might need to look at together, is how what are we was there a context that we co-created that was a factor in someone making that choice, but that choice is ultimately one person's choice, and that is really, I mean, they should have been talking about if there was something that was making them unhappy in the relationship, it was their responsibility to be talking about it with the partner.
Mm-hmm.
So, that can be a really hard place for couples to like hold both of those at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Of how do we say this is absolutely not the fault of the person who was betrayed in any way, and also there could be factors that maybe the relationship was really struggling before someone decided to make that choice.
Yeah. So the audience here is all dealing with extreme domestic violence because my partner and I, Chris, we only deal with very high conflict divorce cases, custody battles, and
Uh,
co-parenting.
wow.
Everyone is well within the realm of that intimate terrorism that you talked about.
Okay.
So I'm thinking for the people that are still in relationships where there's repeated betrayal and cheating, is there ever a way to recover, or how do you start? How do you start kind of letting go of an unhealthy relationship?
Oh man. The There's part of me that wants to say if both people were committed to improving the relationship, then there's a chance to heal. And I
No,
see you shaking your head.
never. Not in
Yeah.
this audience. No.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
all
in
like
that
domestic violence for sure.
the partner isn't willing to try to repair in any way.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
these are
So
the
it's
ones with the
healing on your own.
controlling, like
Yeah.
physical, emotional, financial, legal, sexual, revenge, all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So not healing as a couple, healing individually. How do we
Yeah.
heal individually
Right.
when our partner has made it really clear there's no healing that can be done as a couple because the betrayal has been so huge and the
Right. And
continuing
it's
betrayal is
my
there?
fault. It's my fault that you cheated on me. I've done everything wrong in the relationship for decades, according to my partner. And, you know,
Yeah. A lot of blame
yeah.
going around.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
So,
how do I deal first? How do I know? Because a lot of people stay in these relationships thinking maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get better with continued consistent betrayals, serial cheating, personality
yes.
disorders, a cycle of like it's fine for a little while, but it always keeps going back down and
Yeah.
deteriorates.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and so I'm hearing like in what you're talking about, there's already been a decision to end the relationship.
Yeah.
And so how do I then not rebuild trust with my partner,
Yeah.
but how do I go about rebuilding trust and learning to trust someone new again?
Right, because so many
Yeah.
people in this space have been betrayed. They got out of the relationship and they're thinking that was so bad that I never want to put myself out there again. That I'm afraid
Yeah.
that this is going to happen again. That my partner made me feel like I'm flawed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really painful place to be in. A
Hmm.
really, really painful place to be in. And I start thinking about like there is um it's trauma.
Hmm.
It's a traumatic experience, and what we do know actually about PTSD is that PTSD is one of the most curable mental health diagnoses. We have
Wow, that's
excellent,
awesome to hear.
yes, yeah, yeah. There are very clear evidence-based um, treatments, cognitive processing therapy for PTSD, which is the one that I do. And then there's prolonged exposure and EMDR. If you talked to an EMDR person, they would just say like it's the best thing ever. I would say like it's really good, but I like CPT better because that's the one that I do.
All right,
I'm biased
tell us
that way.
about CBT
Yeah.
and prolonged exposure in particular.
Yeah. So cognitive processing therapy or CPT is really looking at how did these events change your views of yourself, like I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'm not lovable or wanted in some way, your views of other people, Other people aren't going to be safe. They can't be trusted. And then also just views of the world,
Yep.
like all men are pigs. Like something that's like kind of global.
Hmm.
And what can happen for all of us is that because um, it was such a negative experience, and because it's so scary, the idea that anything like that could ever happen again, we put up a lot of protective walls
Hmm.
to people who are safe. And we also end up being on the lookout for we need to be on the lookout again to be assessing if people are safe or are not safe. But sometimes that is almost a little too sensitive, or it can become a little too sensitive in that we keep even safe people distant from us out of that fear of risk.
Yeah.
Um, so cognitive processing therapy specifically ends up helping people work through the impact of the traumatic event on their beliefs about themselves, helping them develop uh, other thoughts about themselves that are more balanced, and then also having a way to evaluate future situations. Hopefully, like to use evidence of like if I went on a date um, or if I started dating somebody, I can use evidence of how they are with other people, with me, to help me determine and suss out if they're safe or not.
As you're saying that, it's making me think about the question a lot of people have is, how do I know if I could trust this person? Like I should be able to tell instantly, right? Like some kind of signal.
Oh,
But we've learned that it's not like that. It's that it takes time. They have to earn
it
your trust. So
does.
it's almost like developing that evidence that I think you're talking about.
Yeah. And so, and part of cognitive processing therapy is this concept of a trust star, where I wish I could draw it, but it's like, if you have all these intersecting lines,
Hmm.
I could say, like, can I trust someone to be on time? Can I trust someone with my kids to keep them safe? Can I
Hmm.
trust someone to pay me back $20? Can I trust someone to, with my physical safety?
Hmm.
Can I trust someone with my emotional, like to be emotionally supportive when I confide in them? And so there are, people can go through like, um, I don't really need my my mailman to be emotionally supportive of me. So I just need to trust that they're going to deliver my mail and pick it up. So I can kind of mark them. Can I trust them in this category? Maybe it's okay that I don't trust them in this other category.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they can go through and evaluate different relationships in their life to determine where can I trust my parents, my siblings, my partner, the people that I'm starting to date. And they can also use this to think of, what areas do I really need to trust my significant other on?
Hmm.
My physical safety is going to be high. The ability to emotionally support me, that's going to be high. But like my husband, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure he has like undiagnosed ADHD. So there are things like, can I trust him to be on time? Sometimes. Can I trust him to remember important details? Not so much, but maybe
Hmm.
that's a livable thing that
Hmm.
I don't necessarily have to have,
But also
and I
even
can trust
thinking
him.
about that, like
Yeah.
saying it out loud, I think is helpful
Mm-hmm.
because it's recognizing, well, this is what it is. Like, can I
Yeah.
live with that rather than not
Yes.
talking about it and keep getting like upset every time it happens?
Yeah. And I'm thinking in the couples work, you would want to be able to talk about it.
Hmm.
And even just being able to say, I get this is you, and that can't really change. You've got ADHD. And sometimes it's really annoying that you forget things, and I have to tell you multiple times.
Yeah.
Um, but even if you could have a conversation like that, I'm thinking that would go a long way in telling me if this was a safe relationship. Like
Hmm.
if we can, in a safe way, talk about the things that annoy us
Right.
and the things that we'd want changed, um, and also the things that can't be changed. I'm thinking about research from the Gottmans,
Hmm.
the Gottman Institute, which do a lot of research on couples, and they have research that says like 69% of couples' problems aren't solvable because they're personality differences.
Wow.
So, how do we talk about our frustrations while also accepting that this is who you are?
Hmm.
Um, in things like ADHD, obviously. So,
Yeah.
but to tie it to what you were talking about, you could use the trust star to help you determine in what ways can I trust this? In what ways am I still finding out if this person is trustworthy in this area or not? And what other evidence might I need to help me know if I can trust them a little bit more? I also like to talk to my clients about I need to give people ways to earn my trust. If I don't ever, and it takes a little bit of risk on my end to do that. Now, I don't have to give them the things that matter the most to me. I can give them like small things
Hmm.
and build up as the trust
Like
goes.
what kinds of things?
Yeah, it's hard without a specific client example here. Um, Let me see. So I have two different thoughts going through my head. Like if you were just starting to date, let's say that you were in a relationship where there was violence, you have gotten out, you're starting to date again, and you're trying to think like, are they safe around my kids?
Yeah. Good example.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I could try like inviting them to a baseball game. The person that I'm dating, inviting them to my kid's baseball game and just introducing and seeing how that goes. That's a small risk versus I'm going to let you watch them for the weekend while I go to a work conference. Like that's a
Yeah.
big risk, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we can start with small risks, see if trust can be built in a small risk, and then titrate the risk up and continue to see is this person still trustworthy at this level?
Hmm.
And if they're not, then we can know we're not going to go further. This is the level of trust that I have, and that might be disappointing if they can't be trustworthy at a higher level, but it's also good information, and it
Yeah.
makes sure that we don't trust them with more than what they are trustworthy with.
So is that what you meant when you talked about prolonged exposure, or is that prolonged exposure something different?
Prolonged exposure is a different type of therapy, which um, has to do with, I'll say, um, a lot of people can go through traumatic events in their life and they don't necessarily develop PTSD. So, so prolonged exposure would be very specific for if you have PTSD. A trauma event could lead to depression, could lead
Hmm.
to anxiety, it could lead to other things. And most people will go through a traumatic event. Like if I am in a car crash, that's like a kind of basic one. Um, but they don't always develop PTSD after. They might have some initial symptoms, but then it goes away with time and they're okay. So not everyone will develop PTSD, but if someone did, prolonged exposure is specific for PTSD, and part of what it does is help desensitize you to the memories.
Mm-hmm.
What can happen with PTSD is that the memories get kind of locked in the brain on repeat.
Yeah.
So they might have nightmares, remembering it. They might have just like cooking and then all of a sudden thinking about and remembering the traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like it just comes and like hits you in the face when you don't want it
Mm-hmm.
to, over and over and over. And so the work of prolonged exposure is to help desensitize you to the memory, so that way you can have the memory without the painful feelings associated with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part of it is that people might start avoiding certain places or activities. So, like if I had been in a car crash and I had PTSD, if I was avoiding being in cars and
Mm-hmm.
driving again or being on a bus, the in that scenario, we might just sit in a car together, like
Mm-hmm.
help you get used to being able to drive again. In domestic violence, we're not really gonna we don't want you to be around the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna help you be around them more. But
Right.
if there was maybe somebody was avoiding dating, so we could just join a dating website, and that might be a first step, and just get
Mm-hmm.
used to what it's like to be on a dating website. um, People can go on kind of like group dates, group
Mm-hmm.
friend
Or like
dates might
meetups.
be. Yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just ways of um,
Like gradual.
gradual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I've heard that kind of therapy is good with phobias as well.
Yes, yeah, yeah, it is. So yeah, it can be good for any time where the avoidance is really high. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared, and so I'm avoiding something, whether that's taking tests or things that on the extreme side, like I have been in this really toxic relationship and I'm scared to date again. And how do I just slowly, in my own comfort zone, start pushing myself a little bit more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could talk about this very particular thing, I think, for a while,
Yeah.
but I'm getting a little bit out of time. So before we wind up, and we should definitely talk again, Elizabeth, can you tell people how to find you?
Yes, yeah. So communicateandconnect.com. That is the primary website that has information about our counseling services. We also have a podcast called the Communicate and Connect podcast, which is specific for military and veteran relationships.
Wow,
So
we have a lot of clients in those relationships.
yes, yeah, there's unfortunately there is overlap with
Yeah,
there's like a high rate of intimate partner violence in military relationships, so I'm not too surprised.
yeah, we should.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that could be a topic to really focus on next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well,
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
no, my pleasure. I'm so glad it worked.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for helping me with the technology.
No problem. All right, let's definitely plan another one. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming
Yeah.
on today. And I definitely learned some stuff, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
All right, we'll be in touch. Okay, bye.